who will operate the audio visuals, Mr. Anthony Lamb, Transportation Safety Specialist, who will operate the timer, Dr. Jana Price, Transportation Safety Specialist, Dr. Lauren Groff, Chief Data Scientist, Mr. John Flynn, Aerospace Engineer Systems, and Mr. Tim LeBaron, Director of our Office of Aviation Safety. Behind me is Mr. Daniel Baranowski, who will provide legal support. For those in the room, several representatives from our Transportation Disaster Assistance Division are here to provide support to anyone who need it. Can I have those representatives please stand up so people know where you're at? Thank you so much, Elias and Max. And I see Sarah at the back there. Once again, I want to thank the American Red Cross for being here. Volunteer mental health clinicians from the Red Cross will be available for the duration of this hearing to provide emotional support for anyone who's attending. Now, let's reintroduce the parties to the hearing. As I call the name of each party, I ask the designated spokesperson to identify themselves and then introduce others at their table. Please push the microphone button to talk and push it again when you're finished. Airline Pilots Association.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Captain Dan. I'm one with ALPA, Party Coordinator and Spokesperson. With me today, Chris Heck, Captain Matt Gorshey, Shea Boehm, Captain Mike Palazzolo, and Captain Russell Page.
Nice to see you, ALPA, in alphabetical order. Federal Aviation Administration.
Good morning, Chairwoman. I'm Todd Gentry. I'm the manager of the FAA's Accident Investigation Division. Beside me is Patrick Lush, my lead investigator and party coordinator. Beside him is Art Sheffield for ATO. He's my subject matter expert. Heidi Kemner is my hearing officer. And across from me is Chris Stevenson, which is my general counsel.
Wonderful. Good to see you, FAA. NADCA.
Good morning, Chair. John Murdoch, the party spokesman. To my right is Karina Marinas, air safety investigator. To her right is Natalie Moffett, legal counselor for NACA. Across the table from me, Seth Myers, aviation safety investigator. To his left, Cher Oxenberg, safety representative. And then to her left is Sandy Fulmer, safety representative.
Wonderful. PSA Airlines. I should not leave you out. Good to see you too, NADCA. PSA Airlines.
Good morning. My name is Darren Hall. I'm the Vice President of Safety, Security, and Development for PSA Airlines. With me is our Director of Operations, Captain Lucas Bowden, and beside me is our legal counsel, Benjamin Allen.
Thank you so much, PSA. And Sikorsky.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Dave Blair, the Chief Pilot for Safety with Sikorsky. Behind me is Jill Browning, our Chief Air Safety Investigator. To my right is Paul Bowles, our counsel. To my other right is Kyle DeLong, our Director of Aviation Safety and Airworthiness, and Dan Cooper, who you met earlier, our Senior Technical Fellow with Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky.
Yes, thank you very much. And U.S. Army.
Good morning, Chair. Brigadier General Matt Raymond, I'm the Army spokesperson. With me is Colonel Matt Parker as our Army Party Coordinator. We've got Colonel Kevin Easter, our Deputy Director of Aviation. We've got Colonel Noah Fontenez, who is our legal counsel. We're joined today from yesterday with CBFI Robert Phillips, who's the Army Standardization Officer. And we've got Miss Sydney Tutine, who is an air traffic specialist for the Army.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, only the designated party spokesperson may question the witnesses on behalf of their respective organization. I'd now like to provide a general overview of today's proceedings. You may wish to refer to the hearing agenda for more details. Please plan to be here until around 7 p.m. today. We obviously ran later than that last night, and we'll do that again today if we need to. We only have one opportunity for this hearing, and we want to make sure that everybody has time to ask their questions. At some point, we'll break for lunch, and as needed throughout, we'll take smaller breaks. Please remain flexible. I do not know what to tell you about the restroom situation or air conditioning. I'm going to have a call with GSA for the 50,000th time later today. It's not them, actually. So we are doing the best we can. For the parties and for the witnesses, we do have a key for restrooms down here. So if you need it, just come see one of us, and we'll make sure that you all have what you need, because your presence here is needed in a more timely way. Not that others are not, but there are restrooms in the Hilton in the meantime, and also in L'Enfant Plaza around the food court. I apologize. We are doing the best that we can. So panel 3 will begin in a moment. Like I said, we want to make sure everyone is asking questions, and I alone have, I'm going to be honest, have 20 pages worth of questions from everything that I've looked at. The docket for air traffic control is very extensive. It is very lengthy, thousands of pages. It might be hundreds, but it seems like thousands of pages. Okay, it wasn't just me. Okay, and we read them all, we study them, and so it might take a while. It's very important to me, especially more important than I think, and I think the members would agree, that the technical panel be able to ask their questions. They are the investigators. I do not want them shortchanged at all. Parties also have questions. We have questions. So I'm going to warn you, if I do not want you or anyone else to feel like you're rushed, that you can't ask more questions. I've said this to our amazing staff. So that means this panel may go all day. If that happens and I start seeing it, that means panel 4 might move to tomorrow with panel 5. We just want to make sure that we're doing the best we can. Also, I know that means that witnesses are going to need breaks. I'll make sure that we keep track of that. FAA, Todd, if you feel like, or any of your party reps, if you feel like you're hearing from folks or you're seeing that they might need a break, communicate that to Dan, and we'll make sure that everybody is accommodated, because I know it could be a long day. So panel 3's focus is training, guidance, and procedures applicable to DCA air traffic control. As I said, if we have time, we'll move on to panel 4. It might move to tomorrow, but that is going to be an overview of collision avoidance technology. We'll follow the same process on both panels. Dr. Bauer will introduce the topics to be addressed, as well as the technical panel members and witnesses. I will then swear in the witnesses, who will be questioned in the following order. First by the NTSB technical panel, next by the parties to the hearing, and finally the Board of Inquiry. We may go back to the technical panel and others, just to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get their questions answered, especially because the technical panel will be doing the analysis independently, and they have to make sure that they have all the information that they need. A reminder, no electronics at the witness table. If you need a break, paper airplanes. Just kidding. On behalf of the board, just hold up a note. I'd like to thank the many witnesses testifying at this hearing in support of aviation safety. We ask that all witnesses be present, as a reminder, through the conclusion of this hearing, because you may be recalled at any time. I know we might have some recalled today. We'll see how that goes. So Dr. Bauer, please describe the exhibits.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hamady. Exhibits for this hearing include reports produced by NTSB investigative staff, videos, and other documents submitted by the technical panel members, witnesses, and parties to support the testimony and questions you will hear today and tomorrow. The exhibits for this hearing are in the docket. The docket number is SA-544. That's Sierra Alpha 544. The NTSB is authorized by statute to disclose information to carry out its mission, but we protect confidentiality and proprietary information to the extent possible. As such, the exhibits contain redactions. These are the result of negotiations between the parties and the NTSB regarding the disclosure of information claimed to be personally identifiable, security sensitive, or proprietary in nature. Though redacted, the exhibits contain sufficient information so that members of the public can refer to them during the hearing and throughout the NTSB investigation. The exhibits entered into the record and any presentations, along with other records of the investigation, become part of the NTSB public docket and are available via the NTSB website ntsb.gov. The public docket opened yesterday morning. Party spokespersons and witnesses have been provided electronic copies of the public docket containing the exhibits identified above. The docket is located on the investigation page, which you can access in one of two ways: by visiting ntsb.gov, or if you've joined us in person, you can scan the QR code on the hearing agenda. On the investigation page, you will find the link to the public docket on the right-hand side, just below the map. A transcript of the testimony taken during the hearing will be prepared and entered into the docket as soon as possible. In addition, Mr. Baranowski will keep a list of any documents admitted during the hearing that are not currently exhibits in the NTSB public docket. These documents will be submitted after the hearing and entered in the docket. As a reminder, if a party to the hearing has a new exhibit to propose in accordance with 49 CFR Section 845.9, it will not be admitted unless the chairwoman determines that good cause has been shown. Chairwoman Hamady, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. We're ready to begin panel 3. Will you please go over the panel topics and introduce the NTSB technical panel and witnesses?
Chairwoman Hamady, panel 3 is on training, guidance, and procedures applicable to DCA air traffic control. The panel will address DCA ATCT facility type, services, radar, visual, and expectations. Training and proficiency of controllers, from initial training of all controllers through individual training and certification at DCA ATCT. Initial classroom, certification, simulation, refresher, recurrent, and compliance with the National Training Initiative and applicable documentation. Training, guidance, and procedures applicable to DCA air traffic control. Resource management, staffing within the tower and combined positions. Separation standards, radar, visual, instrument flight rules, or IFR, visual flight rules, or VFR, and their application. Conflict alerting. An explanation, controller response expectations, nuisance alert prevalence, both in general across the National Airspace System, or the NAS, as well as specific to DCA, ATCT, and this accident. System safety, logic, and alerting, including design, adaptation, and human factors issues such as controller response. Night vision goggles, or aided pilot, the impact to air traffic control. Helicopter holding within the DCA airspace. Traffic flow management, including airport arrival rate, miles and trail, slot program, time-based flow management, and hourly rate fluctuations. The use of circling to runway 33 for offloading, traffic flow, and risk mitigation. ADSB in and out and the impact to air traffic control operations, and safety risk management panels. The NTSB technical panel, starting down on my right, is composed of Mr. Brian Soper, lead aviation accident investigator for air traffic control. Ms. Sarah Lewis, an aviation accident investigator for air traffic control. Dr. Catherine Wilson, senior human performance investigator. And Captain Van McKinney, aerospace engineer for helicopters. Witnesses for panel 3 are composed of the following individuals. From my left, nearest the board members. In the front row, we have Mr. Nick Fuller, the Acting Deputy Chief Operating Officer with the Air Traffic Organization of the Federal Aviation Administration. Ms. Mandy Chendi, Traffic Management Officer with the Washington District for the Federal Aviation Administration. Mr. Brian Lehman, Air Traffic Manager for the Potomac Consolidated TRACON with the Federal Aviation Administration. Mr. Clark Allen, who is the Operations Manager of the DCA ATCT at the time of the accident with the Federal Aviation Administration. Mr. James Jarvis, an Air Traffic Control Specialist, formerly with the FAA Eastern Service Air Quality Control Group with LEDOS. Dr. Kenneth Allendorfer, Manager of Human Systems Integration Branch with the Federal Aviation Administration. In the second row, from left to right, we have Mr. Rick Dressler, Aviation Site Manager for MedStar Transport with Metro Aviation Incorporated. Mr. Eric Silverman, an Air Traffic Control and Airfield Operations Manager for the DC, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston Northeast region with American Airlines. And Command Chief Warrant Officer David Van Vechten, former standardization instructor pilot with the Army Aviation Brigade with the U.S. Army. Chairwoman Hamady, these witnesses have been pre-qualified and their respective experience and qualifications appear in the docket as exhibits. This concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. I'll now ask the witnesses to please stand. Please raise your right hand and please answer by saying, I do. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth? Thank you. You may be seated. As a reminder to the witnesses, you will remain under oath until the conclusion of this hearing. We ask that you answer the questions factually and avoid any analysis. If there are questions on whether something is speculation or analysis, your party reps may raise their hand with any sort of concerns, or you may ask me that question or state that you believe it's analysis or speculation. Finally, when you're speaking, please bring the microphone closer, push the button when you're speaking, and don't forget to turn it off when you're done speaking. I am going to just two things for those who are watching or in the audience, and also the parties and for the panelists. We asked difficult questions yesterday, and we'll do so today. Our objective today is to thoroughly understand crew dynamics and air traffic control and operations. This is a complex and dynamic operating environment, and it is important for us to understand how workload and responsibilities are managed. Second, I asked this yesterday, and I'm going to specifically ask because we really don't, in the federal government, have jurisdiction over the private entities. I'm going to ask this from I guess I will ask Mr. Van Vechten and Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller on behalf of FAA and Mr. Van Vechten on behalf of the U.S. Army. Your whistleblower policy, I asked yesterday, do you protect your employees and contractors from retaliation, harassment, and intimidation?
For the FAA, yes.
Army?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to ensure it's employees and contractors for both.
That's correct.
Okay, great. If that occurs, I will be notified, and I will not hesitate to report that to any Inspector General, Office of Special Counsel, or Department of Justice. I just want you to be aware of that. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Soper.
Thank you, Chairwoman. We'll start off with a softball for you. Mr. Allen, could you just give us a brief explanation of the type of facility DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower is, basically the primary services you provide, and what you're involved with there, and is there anything unique about that facility that you feel are important to be understood as we move into all these questions about the guidance and procedures at the tower?
Yes, good morning. DCA is a Level 9 air traffic control tower only.
Sorry, can you stop for a second? The whistleblower status would apply for anything provided during testimony or participation in this hearing and participation in the investigation, correct? FAA?
Correct.
Army?
Yes, ma'am.
Start again, Mr. Soper.
Thank you. Do you need the question repeated, Mr. Allen?
Yeah, one more time.
Great. So could you just give us a brief explanation of the type facility DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower is, the primary services that you provide from that tower, or that tower provides, I should say, and is there anything unique about the DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower that you feel is important to be understood as we move into the questioning about the guidance and the procedures with DCA that you would just like to have at the head of that?
Yeah, good morning. DCA is a Level 9 air traffic control tower only. It operates 3 runways in a north configuration and a south configuration. With that, we primarily are made up of airlines servicing the fixed-wing traffic, and then law enforcement, medevac, and the various armed services for a significant helicopter operation. With our airspace, there are various prohibited areas adjoining additional level Class Bravo airspaces. It makes up the Washington Tri-Class Bravo. And with DCA Tower, it's unique in the lack of real estate that the airfield has, in the amount of operations that we run. With our ground control, it's unique that they are also ramp control and service the gates and the alleyways. As far as the local control or helicopter control, or both of them actually, in the airspace, operating with the prohibited areas, there's significant VIP flights. There are special missions. There are a significant amount of flybys that occur, so there's a lot of coordination and special operations that occur in the DCA Class Bravo.
You mentioned flybys. For those that might not be aware, what do you mean when you say flybys?
Flybys, we have those for special events, most recently the 4th of July events that transpired, as well as there are flybys at Arlington National Cemetery for fallen soldiers.
Okay, great. Thank you. And do you provide radar services at this facility?
We do.
Okay. And in this facility, the tower is equipped with control tower radar displays that are there for the use and controllers in providing services. Can you explain to us the primary use of these displays and how they are to be used by air traffic controllers to include their benefits as well as the limitations of their use?
Yeah, so our certified tower radar display has a map of the general area, the adjacent facilities, and prominent landmarks. It helps with situational awareness and workload. It is incorporated in what air traffic controllers have as part of their scan. They'll scan that, grab information from it. They'll scan, look out the window. They'll utilize their strips. We have the ASD, the Airport Surface Detection Equipment. It is one tool that comprises the overall scan and how we operate the facility.
Thank you. And one last one in this area, if you could explain for us the The positions that you staff in this tower, or that this tower staffs for operating services in a normal configuration, if you could just kind of step us through what those positions are and basically their function in the tower.
Yep. So we'll start with local control. So they are operating the runways, clearing folks to land, clearing them to take off. There is assistant local control. They're an extra set of eyes for the local controller. They help provide sequencing for the departures and the arrivals, and they coordinate with the adjacent facilities or adjacent positions within the tower cab. The ground controller, like I said earlier, operates all the aircraft on the ground as well as provides ramp control for the airfield. There's the helicopter position that controls the helicopters in the Class Bravo airspace as well as the Delegated Security Services airspace. We have a clearance delivery flight data position that maintains the weather, assists with traffic management duties, as well as amending and providing clearances for IFR aircraft. Traffic management unit, they, as it says in the title, they assist with anything traffic management related, whether it's getting release times for departures, initiating programs for DCA, and coordinating things of that nature. And then there would be a supervisor or controller in charge that would oversee the entire operation and provide oversight.
What is the basic difference between a supervisor or a controller in charge?
Supervisor would be a management personnel that is overseeing the operation. If one is not available, a controller can be placed as controller in charge to fill that position.
I assume there's a qualification process to be a controller in charge. It's not just any controller could do that duty, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to shift into some separation standards and use of visual separation, which has been a hot topic through this entire investigation. I just want to remind, as we do ask these questions, I know a lot has went on. The FAA has done a lot to mitigate stuff in this airspace already, so there have been things implemented since the time of the accident. But we would like everybody to frame their responses as on the day of the event. What was in place on the day of that event? So the policies, the way things were done, the SOP, everything like that, we want it framed in that. Because we're still here trying to figure all of that out. Mr. Allen, or I'm sorry, Mr. Fuller, you gave a pretty good definition of this yesterday, so I'd like to ask you to do this for us again and remind us. We've heard a lot about visual separation in this event. Could you briefly explain what visual separation is, how it is applied, and the difference between pilot applied and tower applied visual separation for air traffic?
In Class B airspace, controllers are required to maintain 1.5 miles or 500 feet between fixed-wing aircraft over 19,500 pounds and VFR helicopters. Visual separation is a means by which separation responsibility can be transferred to the pilot after they report traffic in sight. Visual separation, you must ensure that you have Class B separation before and after the application of visual separation, and that's for pilot-applied visual separation. If it were tower-applied visual separation, the tower is still maintaining responsibility for separating the aircraft by visually observing them and providing directions to ensure they don't conflict. On the night of the accident, they were not using tower-applied visual separation. They were using pilot-applied visual separation. Again, the requirement is for the air traffic controller to have Class B separation before and after the application of visual separation.
Okay. And, sorry, I lost my place there. Mr. Allen, how prevalent was the use of visual separation at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower? Could you provide us some of the benefits and limitations to using visual separation?
Visual separation was used on a daily basis between the helicopter operators and the commercial traffic departing and landing at DCA. Visual separation was paramount to making the operation work efficiently for the amount of volume and complexity that the airspace has.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I wanted to bounce right back to Mr. Fuller just 1 second on the visual separation. On pilot-applied visual separation, you mentioned that it puts the onus of separation on the pilot at that time to maintain the visual separation. Does it relieve the controller of their responsibility to ensure separation?
So I will tell you that the responsibility at that point is on the pilot to separate themselves from the other aircraft, and that means to maneuver as necessary to avoid a collision. Now, as an air traffic control professional, we are always going to do the extra mile. If we see a conflict, even if we are applying visual separation, we will still provide additional traffic information and make sure that that pilot understands that they still have that responsibility. I believe in the night of the accident, you heard the controller reach out and provide an additional instruction to the PAC 25 helicopter to ensure they had traffic in sight and they verifying they were still maintaining visual separation. It's the pilot's responsibility, but air traffic controllers will go the extra mile to make sure that we're providing information as necessary.
Okay, thank you. And back to you, Mr. Allen. Was it your experience that the workforce had a clear understanding of the limitations as much as the benefits derived? Do you feel that the operators had a clear understanding of these as well from your experience working there?
From my experience, the controller workforce was well versed in utilizing visual separation, and the helicopter users were very aware of visual separation and what it entailed.
Okay. And Mr. Jarvis, for you, I know that you're on this panel. You conducted compliance verifications as part of the Eastern Service Area Quality Control Group at DCA. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And what time frame was that again? From when to when did you do that at DCA?
From when did I?
What year to what year were you? Have you done that service at DCA?
At DCA,
yeah.
From about 2017 till July of 2023.
Okay, so it wasn't that far in the past. When you were there during the compliance verifications that you did do, was visual separation or controllers' application of visual separation or their understanding of it ever a question or a deficiency through those ECVs that you can recall?
Yes.
In what way? Could you expound on that a little bit?
Approximately 2016 to 2017, we conducted an evaluation, and although we did not identify non-compliance, there were situations in which it did not appear the scan was going in the direction that we felt it should have gone. Again, we did not identify non-compliance. We did was we left the facility with a comment, a concern, and from there they took care of that.
So they took care of. So you were able to follow up with that they provided some sort of mitigation or training to that comment or what you observed while you were there.
Based on data that they had in their facility, internal verification system, they followed up with visual separation, and it looked like they took care of it in that formality.
Okay. Mr. Allen, something that our team found unique when we were listening to audio and observing operations at DC Airport Traffic Control Tower was the pilots almost reflexively requesting pilot-applied visual separation immediately upon receiving an initial traffic advisory or check-in. Do you have a sense of why that is here? Was that something that they encouraged, or was it something that air traffic control offered to them at some point? It struck us as a little odd. I think all of us did, because in most other places I've been, it doesn't quite happen that way. It's usually given traffic, and then they may actually ask the pilot to apply visual separation. Kind of goes.
So with the way the airspace is constructed with the prohibited areas, the way the helicopter route structure and the airfield with the approaches and departures, the way it is all integrated, like I said in your previous question, that visual separation is paramount in order to expedite the flow of all traffic, whether it's the fixed-wing traffic or the helicopter traffic. So in my opinion, any helicopter operator that has been in the area for a length of time understands how the operation works and how it needs to work in order to efficiently move the aircraft. But I would defer to the gentlemen behind me that are the helicopter operators for their opinion.
That's great, and that's where I was going next. Mr. Van Vechten, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, sir. With night vision goggles on from Cabin John, I can visually see aircraft landing and departing runway 9, lining up at Wilson Bridge. So it is common practice to identify the aircraft and then call visual separation from a long distance away. As we descend, it can become challenging to maintain constant visual on that aircraft, but if they're landing runway 1, it's not a factor because I will be parallel with that traffic.
Okay, and we're going to get back to that a little bit later as well, so thank you. Mr. Dressler, would you like to speak to it, please?
I think here it is a reflexive comment because experienced operators are well aware of the traffic flow in and out of the airport. And I think it was encouraged by DCA Tower in our conversations last year to understand fully visual separation, and it does relieve the controller of some percentage of responsibility that they can then free up and put their attention elsewhere. Many of our members do not accept visual separation, certainly not pilot applied, where my understanding is both pilots need to accept. These would be the law enforcement members who don't have a predictable way to continue visual tracking of aircraft while they're in orbits, let's say, and they don't know where those orbits will end up going. So we do accept it when possible. We do accept it reflexively, but we do have plenty of operators who do not accept it.
So I'm going to remain with you. Have you experienced concern while operating here in the DCA airspace? Have you experienced concern with the application of visual separation, whether pilot applied or tower applied, just from your point of view within this airspace? And do the concerns lie more with one entity or the other? Like, is there one particular unit or a group of units or a type or a facility? You know, is there anything, or is it just all over the map?
Generally speaking, I think it works very well.
Okay.
It has enormous challenges in a night environment. Whether on goggles or off goggles, it's very simple to understand whether north ops or south ops are being used at DCA. It is, I mentioned yesterday, it's still remarkably hard to identify aircraft when you are flying, whether it's the background or a whole host of reasons. It can be very challenging, I think, as every pilot would say. We use traffic alerts and traffic monitoring systems in our helicopters, all the DC operators, the civilian and law enforcement side, and it is exceptionally challenging when you have particular units that don't broadcast using ADSB. Our systems are not TCAS 2, so we do not take in Mode S or Mode C transponders. We rely upon ADSB. And when you cannot see an aircraft and you've been asked if you can identify traffic and you can't see it, and in your visual scan and then scan your instruments and still can't find the aircraft, it can be very challenging.
So in your experience flying in the airspace here, do you feel more or less comfortable when you hear air traffic control or a pilot request visual separation and an air traffic controller approve that, and it could impact you? Do you get a feeling of comfort, discomfort? How does it affect you?
If I know right away the other operators. There are really only a dozen helicopter operators in this area, and know most of them either personally or by voice. I also know all the tower controllers by voice, and they know all of our voices. We have pilots who've been here and members of our group at 38 years, 28 years. I have several pilots at 28 years. My first trip to the DCA tower, one of the controllers who'd been there forever could imitate some of our voices to a T. She could mimic our voices, and we love them. So when I know the tower by voice, and I know the unit, the particular aircraft that on the other end is accepting visual separation from me, I think it works very, very well, and I have extreme confidence in it.
Is there any unit that when you hear it makes you feel uncomfortable?
Sadly, yes. And as I said yesterday, I don't like saying this. I'll say it again on the record. I'm a former Army aviator, and I'm a retired Air Force officer. And I don't like saying that first heli of the USAF from Andrews, and I don't like saying that 12th Aviation Battalion gives us all pause in the community. And I'm speaking for my group there. We are all very uncomfortable when those two units are operating.
Okay. Mr. Van Bechten, do you request visual separation often when operating in the Class B airspace here?
Yes, I did.
And were you, when you have agreed to provide visual separation, pilot applied, can you explain to me as a helicopter operator, what does that mean to you? What are you taking on, and how do you perform the taskings to ensure that? Like, could you just kind of step me through how that works inside the cockpit?
Sure. When a air traffic control calls on an aircraft, hey, Pat 17, do you have the aircraft 11 o'clock, 1 mile, 2,000 feet? I'll say traffic in sight requests visual separation. They'll say visual separation approved, and then I'll continue on route. So I'll maintain the visual separation, keeping myself clear of that aircraft, ensuring that we're not on converging paths.
Okay. You mentioned earlier, you were talking about it was very easy for you, especially under night vision goggles at night, to be able to acquire traffic inbound on runway 1 final and be able to request visual separation right away because you see them, you know where that's at, and they're going. So my question would be, and we've seen in the video in the opening presentation that Mr. Banning showed, when they have aircraft lined up on final out there, there's 6, 7 landing lights out there in that same general direction. We heard that when under NVGs, depth perception is compromised or could be compromised. And I'm trying to understand, how do you know which one to then maintain from the rest of the time? You've got 7.5 miles to fly. Do you literally keep track of the one aircraft? And do you, I'm just kind of curious how that plays out from there.
Sure. DCA Tower, in my experience, has been some of the best controllers I've worked with in my career. They're very good at pointing out the aircraft. And when I'm at Chain Bridge, I'm at 1,300 feet, so it's easy to silhouette the aircraft lined up for runway 1 against the dark sky. Okay. Like I said, as I descend into the tidal basin, it is more difficult, but as they're calling out that traffic, I can maintain separation with them both mainly laterally because they're going to runway 1.
Okay. And Mr. Dressler, in your experience operating the Class B airspace, would you say that visual separation is conservatively relied upon, or would you say that it is over-relied upon, or do you have no opinion?
I think it's a good balance here, actually.
Okay.
We try very hard to collaborate with our industry partners, including the airlines and including our controllers. And if this is the whole purpose of our meetings last year, was to hear concerns and how we can adapt our operations. We have enormous agility in our ability to do that on the civilian and law enforcement side. So if we hear a concern, last year a discussion came up about missed approaches and altitudes in the helicopter working group held at DC Tower, and we can discuss those things openly and come up with a way to mitigate risk. I think it's a very healthy balance here for those who are experienced enough with the DC traffic and the DC route structure.
Okay. And
can I chime in one second again? Mr. Van Bechten over here.
Yes.
We are also a dual pilot aircraft with at least one crew chief on board. So while one pilot is flying the aircraft, the other pilot is maintaining airspace surveillance and dealing with the radios. In this particular instance, there is no radio changes, so the pilot not in the controls will be scanning for traffic. So it's much easier for us to maintain visual separation because we're a dual pilot aircraft.
Do you still do verbal call-outs during that? Like, if the other person is performing those duties of maintaining visual for you, is there an expectation of kind of verbal call-outs back and forth? Or
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think I heard that in the earlier audio of this flight back when they were up north of Cabin John. So, Mr. Dressler, how far away for you as an operator, because you have a different mission in the military now, what you're doing today, for you, how far away are you comfortable providing pilot-applied visual separation at night under the same conditions that would have existed basically on the night of the accident, which was basically a clear night with, it was just generally a clear night with moderate to busier traffic. How far away?
Typically at night, with landing lights on commercial jet traffic, you can see them stacked up all the way south in the Potomac. So I would feel very comfortable with that. And the conversation is usually, as Mr. Van Vechten said, it's usually a conversation with Tower about the number of aircraft. I would handle visual separation in miles plus without a problem.
Okay. And Mr. Van Vechten, back to you in that same thread with picking them up on the north operation. If you knew that the aircraft called to you was a runway 33 arrival, how does that change things for the ability to keep visual if you were flying essentially the same basic route they were flying that day?
That would be much more difficult because runway 33, as I descend, it would be challenging to pick up that aircraft on the left turn as it's coming in, especially when I get down below 200 feet by Memorial Bridge.
Okay. All right, very well. We're going to shift to a little bit different area here. We're going to start talking about staffing and resource management at the Airport Traffic Control Tower. Mr. Allen, while you were on site immediately after the accident, the overall facility staffing was being categorized as adequately staffed, meaning you had your number on board versus your number authorized under the staffing workbook was a close number. I think it was 28 on board or 26 on board and 30. Actually, it was 28 authorized at that time. Give me the numbers.
We were authorized 28 at that time.
Yeah, so you were authorized 28. And how many did you have on board? Do you remember, CPCs? It's okay if you don't. We have it in the document. These numbers changed a number of times over the course of the investigation.
They've changed.
But nonetheless, at that time, they were a very close number. However, that said, every person we spoke with cited staffing as a significant concern. And there was and basically stated there was a lot more to staffing than authorized versus on board. Okay? So, and I think even you were explaining this to us. So can you help us understand the staffing concerns that you had at the time and tell us why, if your authorized was 28 and your on board was 26, why did you feel that staffing was an issue? Could you explain to us how that plays out?
Yeah, there's many factors, variables that go into staffing. So we were authorized 28, and we had a number relatively close to that. I can't recall the exact number. But with that, folks can be on different types of leave, whether it's military leave. There could be release dates coming up, so we know that we have a person and we're going to lose that person. There is paid parental leave available as a benefit. And when you're looking at the staffing, you can kind of look into the future and see if, this person counts towards the CPC number, but there are extra variables where they're part of the whole number, but yet they're unable to be in the operation on the daily schedule.
Okay. And in the most recent numbers we've received from the FAA for DCA, if I'm not mistaken, they're showing the authorized at 30. And Mr. Fuller, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure you're on top of these. So the authorized is 30, and the onboard is, I want to say 26. Is that right, Mr. Fuller? The problem that we see is that when we look at all those, they have 19 operational, which means that they have 19 that can actually plug in, work a position, and staff the schedule. How many shifts do you have to fill in a day, Mr. Allen, at DCA?
Including supervisors and TMU, you would want 9 people in the morning, 9 on the evening shift, and then you would have 2 for the mid, so that's a total of 20.
Yes, and I believe that in the actual documents that were given, just the CPC staffing was 16 shifts in a day. And so if you have 19 operational controllers and you're filling 16 shifts in a day, now we can start to see why probably controllers are saying staffing is a problem, right? Is that accurate? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
That would be accurate.
Okay. All right, thank you. And Mr. Fuller, having a much larger view of the overall staffing picture for air traffic organization as a whole, how would you categorize the staffing at DCA as compared to other like-type facilities across the NAS? Is it similar and not much different, or is there a big variance? What do you see?
The staffing at DCA for a level 9 tower is commensurate with other facilities of like size.
Okay. Mr. Allen, shifting away from the staffing and onto resource management, which for everybody here, resource management, when we speak to that, we're talking about the actual use of available resources to staff the required positions over the course of a shift or day. And from your perspective, was the tower adequately staffed from a resource management standpoint on the night of the event?
On the night of the event, it was.
Okay. The OS had been, we noted in looking at the logs and stuff that the OS had been on position since about 1823 local that evening. And at the time of the event, that put him on position for about 186 minutes, or just over 3 hours. Is this routine for an OS staffing, or is there any concern about an OS being on position for that amount of time?
Can you, for
Operations
people,
supervisor, I apologize. I tried to get them all. Operations supervisor.
For the operations supervisor, they are managing the shift, and they can, like we had described earlier, they could put a controller in charge and take breaks as they needed in order to be an effective supervisor and provide oversight.
So you would have categorized that as normal, or not out of the ordinary?
It was not out of the ordinary.
Okay. At the time of the accident, the helicopter and local control positions were combined, and they had been since 1540 local that day. And they had only been decombined for a total of about an hour and 20 minutes on that entire day. In your SOP, in the standard operating procedures, it states that helicopter control should normally be decombined between the hours of 10 o'clock a.m. and 21:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. It further stated that the operations supervisor or controller in charge has the discretion to combine or decombine helicopter and local control positions after considering a list of about 7 items that are listed in your SOP. One of the factors to consider in that is helicopter traffic volume within the DCA Class B airspace. Is there a particular threshold of helicopter traffic volume that would warrant combining decombining the positions or combining the positions, or is that completely up to the discretion of the supervisor? How does that work?
For helicopter volume, it is subjective to the person providing the services. So I may be able to control 5 helicopters and it be no volume for me, and maybe you could only manage 2, or vice versa, whatever that may be. So it's subjective to each controller as to what volume is to them.
Okay. And when you read the SOP, your interpretation of its current writing of most, let me rephrase it again, should normally be decombined through those hours. How much liberty do you expect an operations supervisor to take with that? And what I mean is, are there particular things that you expect? Yes, I expect them to do it for training, or if it's required and they meet all the other guidelines. I guess I'm just struggling a little bit. Let me ask a different way. Did an hour and 20 minutes for the full day seem off to you? Would you expect that helicopters would have been staffed more on that over an entire day?
No, there's many variables that go into making those decisions.
Okay. Such as?
The list that's referenced in the standard operating procedure throughout the day. So we just previously discussed staffing. So if staffing, if folks are out sick or whatever may be that we don't have the appropriate staffing that day, we may have to prioritize and adjust our resources in another direction. There could be weather. Multiple factors can occur at any time, and we have to adjust our priorities in order to continue to provide a safe and efficient operation.
Okay. And we read in the SOP, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe it states in there that when combining the positions, the operations supervisor or controller in charge will annotate this in the facility log with the time and reason when helicopters is combined during the normal helicopter hours. Was that still the policy on that day?
I don't believe it was on that day. It had been, that language had been removed sometime before.
Okay. All right. I might be mixing up two versions there, and we'll check to be sure. How do the local control and helicopter positions coordinate when they're decombined, when they are separate?
When they're decombined, they can coordinate utilizing point-out feature and scratch pad entries on the radar displays that they have, or verbal coordination.
Okay. Does a facility track how often positions are combined and decombined as a metric within the facility?
We have the ability to, and we do review staffing and resources.
Okay. Do you recall, I think that, historically up until around 2023's SOP change maybe, or something like that, or was it 24, when they actually went to should normally? Prior to that, it was a mandatory, I think immediately prior to that, it was mandatory unless it was IFR, the OM could approve, or the supervisor could approve combining during IFR operations or instrument flight rules when the weather is such. Since that was made, do you know, did the facility monitor that at all to see if we were opening the floodgates to just not having to staff a position, or were we still trying to staff it as often as possible? When I read that as should normally be staffed during those hours, that barring extenuating circumstances like the ability to conduct training or a staffing shortage on that day, or IFR conditions, which I don't have any helicopters, then I expect it to be staffed, right? That's the way I look at it. Others will view that as, well, it's my discretion. If I didn't feel like it was really needed that day, I just cannot do that. I'm just kind of wondering if the facility monitored that in any way or had discussions as they made that change to ensure that the understanding was that controllers, you still should be staffing that as much as possible outside of those exceptions.
The meetings that I conducted with the supervisors was they did have the discretion as it is written in the SOP, and that we discussed resource management and how to be dynamic in how you utilize your resources. Like we had discussed earlier, there's staffing concerns, there is weather moving in. There's a big push for training and folks to get trained so we can have more CPCs to alleviate these other concerns. So there's never just one factor that may not allow the position to be open or to allow it to be open. It's usually a multi-factor dynamic decision.
Okay.
Can you pause for a
yes,
second?
Absolutely.
OM is operations manager. CPC is certified professional controller. There was another one somewhere in there. Just a lot of people are very interested in this, particularly the families who may just not have aviation experience. And I know it's going to happen if we can try.
Yep.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
When the positions are combined, specifically local and helicopters positions, when they are combined, how does the operation change in the tower?
The operation changes in that the local controller with the combined position is now developing the whole plan for the airspace. They're not just looking at the runways, they are scanning further out and taking in more information and managing the operation accordingly.
So do the roles or even duties change for the other positions, like the assistant local controller?
No, it doesn't change.
No?
No.
Okay. And when positions are combined, in general, you can remember from working as a controller, how does there, if at all, and I know you can't speak for every controller, but in general, so let's just ask you then, how did your scan change? If you combined up positions and you went ahead and took on helicopters, how does your scan change, if at all, when you are combined?
For me personally, it wouldn't have changed.
Okay.
I scanned all traffic and my airspace.
Okay. And kind of run us through what was your general scan? How did you have a method to your scanning, or was it it was ad hoc, or how did you do it?
No, so typically we'll work runways out. So you start at the airport, you're managing your traffic on the runway, preparing the next departure, whatever that may look like, and then you're looking back on final to see, are they maintaining the interval on final? Is there an overtake? What do the speeds look like? Are they too high on the approach? Could they be too low? If you have a helicopter that's integrated with them, how are they doing it? You're issuing traffic, and then you just continue to repeat the cycle. You scan the ASDI, your strips, the CTR, or the radar scope, and then back out the window again. So you get into a rhythm as you continue through while you're working.
Okay. So if going back to the combined positions, if a controller comes in and they are taking over position, they're already combined, so the local and helicopter positions are combined, and the relief comes up and you're passing down the position, the release for the supervisor. If the supervisor comes up while the positions are combined. As the supervisor takes the watch, we know that in order to combine the positions, the supervisor must consider that list of things and assess whether or not they should or should not have it or can or cannot have it combined. Would you expect that a supervisor coming on duty when they're already combined would perform a reassessment of those 7 things? Would they go down the stuff themselves, or would the controller go and say, hey, this, got it, they're combined, see ya, and they would accept that? Or do you expect them to go through the process on their own as well and reassess?
They should reassess. It is now their operation to supervise.
Okay. The local controller had only been certified on local for between, I think, 6 and 8 months. It was May of 2024, so the end of May 2024, actually, on the 22nd. At DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower, considering the complexity of traffic that exists there, as we've been talking about quite lengthy, what would you consider the average seasoning time for a new cert? So seasoning time, just so everybody knows what I'm talking about, is it's kind of a term used that when a person is first qualified, there's a time period in which they settle into that new certification and kind of season on the position, get used to working it on their own without somebody prompting them and stuff. They are certified, but we're a little, I think in general, there's a little bit of caution exercise during the early phases. So do you feel there is kind of, for the operation here and what they are getting certified on, is there any kind of rough seasoning time you look for, or is it completely controller dependent?
It would be controller dependent.
Okay. Without quoting, I'm not looking for quotes directly out of the SOP, Mr. Allen, what are the primary duties and responsibilities of the assistant local controller?
The assistant local controller responsibilities include setting the sequence for departures and managing the departure bay. They are to coordinate with the adjacent facilities, coordinate with TMU and the supervisor, manage already covered that. Manage the flow of traffic. There are an extra set of eyes that are scanning the radar screen, looking out the windows, checking the runways, coordinating with it internally to the tower, to the other positions, to name a few.
Okay. So on the night of the event, while the ALC was working, there were a couple times of conflict alert going off. There were, even before, prior to this, to the accident. In interviews, we didn't glean that there was a lot of interaction between the two of them. That the assistant load controller, do you feel that, would you have expected more engagement from the assistant local controller in this, as you because you reviewed the events afterwards, and I know you can only assess things by reviewing the replays and talking to the controllers and finding out what went on. You weren't present or physically there, but would you have expected more engagement from the assistant local controller in this situation?
I did not review their interview that they had. I had not interviewed them. I don't know their level.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I thought you were actually part of like the covered event review and stuff where you talked to the controllers.
No, I did not interview them, so I have no.
Very good. I apologize. Well, let me ask you this then. So the assistant local controller is actually billeted there as a traffic management coordinator, correct?
Correct.
So as a traffic management coordinator, that person's primary duties is what?
To manage the flow of traffic out of the facility and into the facility, coordinating with the adjacent.
Do they staff the control positions at a equal level or a lesser level in general than the rest of the controllers on there?
They have a proficiency requirement that they need to meet each month.
Okay, so what's their minimum requirement for ALC and local control from the last you can recall?
1 hour minimum.
1 hour minimum. And would you say that it is common for them to get low side numbers of proficiency because they're doing TMC most of the time?
Compared to somebody that is just a controller,
sure,
their time on position, control positions, is lower due to their other duties.
Okay. Sorry, I did another one. Traffic management coordinator. I thought I said it out, though, but so. All right. So now I lost my train of thought. So my concern there is, so you have an individual. Would you expect an operations supervisor or a controller in charge, when they are staffing positions, determining whether to leave something combined based on traffic load, whatever it is they got, everything, would that be something that would be considered like, well, this person isn't probably as proficient as others because they don't do as much time on this position. They generally get their proficiency, but most of the time they're doing traffic management coordinator duties as assigned. Is that a consideration?
A consideration for what?
For like combining positions. Like, well, I would combine positions, but I've got so-and-so on assistant local control, and I need to make sure that everybody's engaged in where they're at, so I don't want to combine the positions yet. I mean, is that a consideration?
Yeah, you would consider.
Okay. And on the night of the event, on the week of the event, we learned that the assistant local controller in this case had just returned from a vacation. They were on a vacation for a little over a week, as I recall, and they were. This was their first shift back to work. Is that something that should be considered by a SUP, or that you would expect to be considered by the SUP? That, hey, they've been out of the operation for a week and they got to jump back in and get used to it real quick. Let's do whatever. I mean, would you kind of slowly in, or is it just kind of you're back to work, go to work?
It would be the person is certified on those positions, and returning back from work, getting on ALC would be, or assistant local control, would be a position where they're not actively working a control position, so it would be a way to, get back into the swing of working.
So in this
again.
case, it would be an appropriate measure to ease them back in your opinion. Okay, good. And overall, in general, did the operations supervisor meet your expectations as the operations manager on the night of the accident?
Repeat the question again.
On the night of the accident, did the operations supervisor meet your expectations as the operations manager during that night while he was on shift at the time of the accident? So I'm asking, considering all the things that person is responsible for, the combining of positions, the traffic management or the monitoring of traffic complexity, density, how much traffic was going on, getting people in and out, training, all these things, was he meeting the expectations that you have for the operations supervisor at that time?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I have for right now, and I'm going to pass it along to Sarah.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning. Mr. Fuller, I wanted to ask a couple questions that Brian started to bring up about proficiency. Can you explain to me, how does the air traffic organization determine the amount of time needed as adequate for proficiency? And if you can just kind of explain to everyone, what is proficiency? What does that even mean?
So we have a minimum amount of time you need to work each month. We call it currency, and I believe it's 16 hours for a control position or a controller to work for 16 hours per month. If they're out for a month or they don't meet those currency requirements, they're required to recertify on each position before returning back to work. If they're out for an extended amount of time, a year or something like that, we put them back through the training program before they go back to work. Proficiency is not quite the same. Proficiency is, it doesn't really have a scale or a metric. It's about a comfort level. If you've been in one facility for 20 years, you could probably come back and in 30 minutes you're back proficient because that's what you've done your entire career. If you're newly certified, obviously you're not going to be as proficient no matter how many hours you get that month. And so it's different. There's no real way to capture that.
Okay, thanks. And so in this instance, the person that was working assistant local control, do you know, are you familiar with what their primary duty was as assigned to DCA Tower by chance?
Yes.
Can you explain to us what were her, what were their duties as an ALC, and what would be their proficiency requirements?
So again, as previously stated, an assistant local control is almost exactly like it sounds. It's like a right seat, or excuse me, a left seat in an aircraft. They're the assistant, the local controller, with identifying traffic, coordinating handoffs, any of the duties that would primarily fall to the local control, they are there to assist with. They're not the primary person speaking the aircraft, but if they identify a conflict, it's pointing them out to the local control. Hey, watch those two. Requesting control for something, let me coordinate a heading, any of those kind of activities to assist the local control in maintaining their duties. Again, I believe as Mr. Allen spoke, you're required to get about an hour of that a month. I don't know exactly how many hours this particular controller got. Again, they had just returned from leave, but it's my understanding they had been certified at this facility for multiple years, and it wouldn't be unexpected for them to come back and be able to handle assistant local control.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Allen, are you aware, do you know how much time had the local controller worked the helicopter position and the local control positions combined during the training and qualification process? Is there a minimum expectation as part of that qualification that they would be able to train on it, combine a certain amount of hours before certification?
I'm not aware of his training records. I don't have
Okay.
the hours off the Dash 25s.
Okay, not a problem. And so overall, for the facility, do you guys have a minimum requirement of having that controller in training show that when they're training on both combined, is there a minimum, or how do they know when they're ready to take on the responsibility of being able to handle both at the same time?
So in the training process, there's a training team associated with each person in training, consisting of a supervisor and certified controllers. With that, there are routine and regular training team meetings, performance assessments, and when the training team would have a consensus that they're able to begin training on more complex or more volume in order to continue progressing in training, then that would be a discussion and occur at that time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jarvis, you were speaking to us earlier about your role with the the Eastern Service Quality Control Group, and when you were assigned to DCA. Can you please add any of your observations that you had while you were there on the health of the DCA training?
Yes, good morning. And I do want to make it clear that I'm here on behalf of myself, not on behalf of my employer, Leidos. The health of the facility, as far as the certified professional controllers, that has always been on the lower number of staffing, not necessarily healthy. It's cost of living is high there, hard to attract those folks. Also, the administrative staff was my biggest concern. I had been asked by a general manager at one point to look into see do they need a second operations manager? And I took a quick look, and the answer was yes, they do. No action was ever taken on that. They had a couple support staff folks at one point, and one I think retired, another one was we'll say relocated, and then they went without any staff specialists for approximately 3 years. Those duties fell to the operations manager and a support manager, as well as the air traffic manager, and that was a concern of mine. I brought that to many attention, every opportunity I had, and at one point I was told to quit bringing it up.
Mr. Jarvis, do you feel that impacted the training program at DCA?
Absolutely. There was not enough folks to manage the training that needed to take place. Anytime a training package needed to be prepared, a support manager they had to do all that work with the help sometimes of the operations manager. And not only would they put it together, they'd have to brief it, and then they'd have to document that the training occurred. And it was a large tasking that took place. And there was also some simulation training that was required annually that the facility didn't have the resources, they didn't have the equipment at one point to do that, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, and I think we're going to come back to some of those reasons why in a little bit. But for right now, can you let me know why do you think that DCA needed 2 operations managers? And if you can you maybe describe, or maybe Mr. Allen can help describe the the duties of an operations manager?
From my perspective, the operations managers needs to manage and coach the operations supervisors. And at this particular facility, they're young. The workforce is very young. They need a lot of attention. And that's a heavy workload on that operations manager. Now, aside from that, the other duties of that operations manager is to manage these very important people movements around the region. Any flybys at Arlington, that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, and especially in many instances, you may have several in one day. And so we'll just say with that comes, that needs to be briefed to the workforce. That's a lot of work. And to do all that coordination, and the Pentagon's right next door to the airport. They have a lot of needs and wants as well. All this communication coordination distracts from the ability to coach the younger supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Allen, I would like to ask you, other than the other metropolitan Washington, D.C. airports, can you think of any other facility in the country that would have the unique challenges that DCA has with being located exactly where it is?
There's none that I'm aware of.
Okay. Can you explain to us some of the complexities that you faced as an operations manager with kind of expand on what Mr. Jarvis said, and also keeping in mind that how many hours did you spend a day typically in the tower overseeing the management?
Yeah, so the operation is the #1 priority. I would oversee daily the operations supervisors as well as the control staff working either the day or the evening shift. There are many challenges throughout a day, whether it's a staffing challenge, whether there's an airport construction project that needs to happen, or there's an issue with gates or the airlines, weather, priority movements, flybys. There's multiple items occur each day that you have to assist and manage. In addition to that, you're trying to meet with your supervisors, provide coaching, provide a direction in how we're going to run this operation and move forward. And then with that, you're also looking at short-term goals, long-term goals, whether there are, during my time, we had a large runway rehabilitation project. It occurred over 2 years, and MWA, the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority, rehabbed all of the runways. So that was a project that continued, and we would have to work through daily while it was going on, the long-term goals of it, what are the impacts of it, how we have to adjust the operation and really be dynamic. So as the operations manager, there's not just, I don't think there's, I'm sure there's in HR, there's a list of duties and responsibilities, but being at DCA and the various lines of business and entities that you touch, it's more than just those duties. It's beyond that. There's just a lot going on with DCA.
Would it be fair to say that those responsibilities and unique challenges also flow down to an operations supervisor, traffic management coordinator, and individual controllers?
Yeah, 100%.
How do you prepare controllers with training to to be able to manage the complexity of working this specific spot in the NAS?
So the trainings that we have the in-house training program that they work through that consists of classroom, simulation, and then on-the-job training. In addition to that, we provide familiarization opportunities where whenever it's time for a trainee to train on ground control, we take them down to the airport authority. They hop in a Suburban and go out and drive the airfield and get the perspective of the airfield, what it looks like to a pilot, take a look at the hot spots, common crossing points, and just get a real feel of how the airfield operates. Whenever a trainee gets to local helicopter and assistant local control, we're fortunate enough that we coordinate with the U.S. Coast Guard that is based at DCA, and we coordinate FAM flights for them so they can get up and fly the helicopter routes, see the perspective from the helicopter users, and how that integrates into the entire system. In addition to that, even the folks that are certified, like our traffic management folks, whenever we are approaching winter for winter weather and de-icing, we do a good job. I coordinate with Mandy, and we have the folks go out and meet their counterparts at Washington Center or Potomac and make that connection and have those discussions. And then prior to coming into the summertime, whenever we have the significant lines of weather that move through, we conduct briefings and, again, have the controllers, the traffic management specialists, meet with their counterparts at the adjacent facilities to discuss those challenges, to, make those connections, and to make the operation that much better.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I appreciate it. I'm going to pass along to my colleague, Dr. Wilson.
Dr. Wilson, if you could pause for a second, just to let everyone know, we do have working bathrooms for everyone up here. Now we've moved on to the air conditioning. So, I do want to say I tried to tell you all that you could wear polo shirts with logo gear, but you didn't listen. I knew the Army wouldn't, but I mean that respectfully. If the witnesses, if you want to take your jackets off, it's hot. I get it. It's fine. Don't feel like you have to be so formal. Go ahead, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to follow up on some of the training questions that we've been talking about. The assistant local control position, is that always staffed, Mr. Allen?
Yes, in accordance with the point 3 and the DCA SOP.
Okay. And so you mentioned that their purpose, they coordinate with the local controller. Is there specific training on how to coordinate?
The on-the-job training, I mean, they sit right next to each other.
Okay. Do they receive any sort of classroom training on, teamwork or how to communicate, the basics of that, so that when they get to on-the-job training, they can apply what they've learned?
It's covered in classroom training on how to coordinate with the adjacent facilities, and within the tower, everyone can just talk freely. So.
And in simulator, there are some simulations that you do as well, correct?
Correct.
Is the assistant local control and local controller paired up in those simulations as well?
We don't simulate for assistant local control.
Okay. Do the controllers receive training on how to manage their workload?
We go through, in the simulation training, we go through various percentages and build up so they can gauge how traffic volume and complexities increase. And then as they do the actual on-the-job training on the position, they begin at lower hours of volume and complexity and then build off of that. So the training team, like I stated, there's a training team associated with them. They meet routinely, they have discussions, and they know where the person in training is at, what they need to work on as they continue to work up to a certified controller.
And if a controller became overwhelmed on shift, the workload just got beyond what they were comfortable with, what would they do?
If there was too much workload, they should notify the supervisor or controller in charge, and we can recall additional staff back that are on break or perhaps other duties to come and relieve them.
Is there a simulated scenario where you push a controller to need to ask for that relief?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are the supervisors trained to recognize if one of their controllers is becoming overwhelmed?
We have discussions about it.
It's not a formal training or a part of their training?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. If the local control and helicopter control positions needed to be decombined, was there staffing to do that on the night of the event?
Yes.
And is that the local controller's responsibility or the supervisor's responsibility to recognize that that's needed?
It would be both.
You had mentioned, Mr. Soper had asked you about the time that the supervisor had been on position, and you had mentioned that if needed, a controller in charge could have stepped in to offer them some relief. Were there any controllers, and you said that the controller in charge had some additional training to be able to fulfill that role. Were any of the controllers on duty that night able to step in as controller in charge if needed?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Soper also asked you about the control, the helicopter control and local control positions being combined. Do you know, you said it could be tracked how often it is combined. Do you know how often the positions are combined versus decombined?
No, we would have to get that data for you, depending on whatever time frame you would like.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any sort of sense? Is it 50% of the time? Is it open more than it's combined, or?
And you're referring to at that time?
Just in general. I mean, let's go back a month. In a given month, is it, I mean, do you feel that the positions are combined more than they're decombined?
It was probably combined more than decombined.
Mm-hmm.
But I would defer to the actual logs.
Okay. Unexpected situations, unexpected events, conflict alerts, how are controllers trained to respond to those?
We review them. We do yearly refresher training as well as recovery problems in the simulator for each controller. So those are, they are reviewed annually and throughout their training.
This could be for Mr. Fuller or Mr. Allen. In 2016, well, in 2015, there were 2 mid-air collisions, and one in San Diego and one outside of, in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. And we had made a recommendation where we wanted these accidents to be included in training. And the FAA responded that in 2017 that all controllers were provided this integrated safety training workshop, which talked about threat and error management. And in our interviews with some of the controllers, we asked them if they knew what threat and error management was, and nobody did. So does that concern you that a training that was offered to all controllers isn't remembered by the controllers?
Sometimes controllers may not recognize the course name or what's specifically being discussed. I recall the NTSB safety recommendations. I was in air traffic safety at the time as an investigator. We have since built into our annual recovery training that Mr. Allen is specifically speaking to as part of unusual situations, traffic alerts, safety advisories, recovery again, and ensuring positive separation. So while those specific accidents from Charleston and San Diego are not included directly, those similar type scenarios are built into the training.
So in the training that you're saying is being developed or has been developed, it's already in place?
It already has been developed as part of our 3120.4 training manual.
And is there training that includes threat and error management, or you feel like covers those topics?
I honestly can't recall what the threat and error management training delivered in 2016 was focused on.
Well, I mean the training that you're talking about.
The training that I'm talking about has a different title now. It's just part of our recurrent training, and we have specific topics. I believe there are 8 specific topics we go over annually, and then the facility has an initial 4 topics I think they can pick as it's germane to their operation.
And does that training include threat and error management or similar topics in terms of recognizing unexpected events and how to respond to them, how to mitigate the risks?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, can I jump in on an exhibit level? Could you provide that for the hearing record, the specific training, and if it's by video, can FAA provide that so our staff can see the video as well as any corresponding materials?
The 3120 is already included in the exhibits. If you want the specific scenarios, they're built into the simulation systems for all those facilities that have simulators. They're required to develop problems in their simulation that focus on each of those areas. So it might be a little difficult. If you'd like a copy of DCA's specific training syllabus, happy to provide that.
I leave it up to you to. I know that nothing was provided earlier in the documentation back and forth between FAA, so I just want to make sure.
We do have some training documents, but let's go ahead and request it again to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date one. I think that would be appropriate.
We'll make sure to provide that.
Thank you.
And I'll just chime in. Sorry. I think the problem is whatever we have doesn't seem to specifically address this. So maybe you guys can talk and figure out what that is.
What happens is we provide topics and we direct every facility to build a simulation problem on these specific topics. And so it's built into their problem at their facility. You have to be in their simulator to run it, and it has to cover those specific topics. So the documentation would just direct them to build problems here. To get the actual problems on video or something that's similar, we would have to go into the lab and manually record it.
The DCA SOP lists the responsibilities for the assistant local control, and the first responsibility listed is alert local control of any unusual situations or traffic conflicts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Allen, I believe you said they don't do any simulator. The ALC, the assistant local control, is not trained in a simulator, correct?
The ALC position is not specifically trained in the simulator. However, when they are certified on it, they are certified on on local control as well. So they would have received simulation there and training there that would then directly correlate with the assistant position.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is if I'm the assistant local control, and I'm supposed to alert the local control of any unusual situations or traffic conflicts, how would I know how to do that?
Because you're already a certified local controller. So you're already aware, and you've already been trained on that.
But I do think there's an additional coordination piece that's needed because you're not the local control. And so I'm trying to understand, how do they know how to do that coordination piece, when to jump in, and maybe it's just from the experience of being a local controller. But is there any sort of teamwork training that happens Sure, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, Dr. Wilson. We do teach the tower team concept, but I think what Mr. Allen is specifically speaking to, it's almost like the best analogy is a backseat driver. Once you have your driver's license, you know how to drive, and when you're sitting in the passenger seat, if you recognize a conflict or a traffic, you alert the person that is operating the specific control position. In our assistant local control, while they don't do direct simulation there, they've done the simulation as a local controller. We teach the tower team concept. We instruct our supervisors, everybody in the tower cab, if you see something, say something, point out those specifics. If the local controller needs a coordination, they're free to just reach over to the ALC and say, do this for me, or provide specific instruction. The more experience they have there, the assistant local control will recognize what assistance the local controller will need. And each local controller has differences in how they like to receive assistance. Some don't want you touching any of their devices or operating their memory aids or their data block manipulation. And so you have that working relationship that just over time you understand the duties for the assistant.
And then in addition to that, they do receive on-the-job training. So they are actively working the position with a certified on-the-job training instructor. So they learn those nuances real time.
Okay, thank you. So let me be a little more direct on the night of the event. Did the assistant local control meet the expectation of the number one responsibility in the DCA SOP?
I don't know what coordination that may or may not have occurred, so I can't speak to whether that person met my expectations or not. I wasn't there.
Mr. Allen, based on your experience, is there any additional training that you think would be good for controllers to have?
Let me get back to you on that one.
Okay. Switching gears, I thought I was going to give you a break, Mr. Allen, but I just have two questions, and then I'll switch to someone else. The conflict alert system, we mentioned that. Can you just explain that system, what its purpose is, how it works from a controller's perspective?
Yeah, the conflict alert system has parameters built into the software of when it'll alarm and at what interval. With that, we get, if it does alarm, we get an audible alarm, and then on the data tag, we would get a CA for the conflict alert and a flashing red letters.
So what does that mean to a controller when that happens?
It draws attention to it. If you already haven't resolved, the system doesn't know that we may, as controllers, have already resolved the situation via separation standards or by other means. So if you've already resolved it, you just take another look at it and ensure that everyone is complying with instructions that you may have issued. If it's something maybe that you didn't see, then you take appropriate corrective action.
Okay, thank you. I'll give you a break for a few minutes. Thanks for your answers. Dr. Allendorfer, switching to you and the conflict alert system. Are there certain algorithms that trigger a conflict alert that you're aware of?
Yes. Conflict alert actually includes multiple algorithms. Some of the algorithms look into the future and predict where the aircraft are going to be in a certain period of time. Other sub-algorithms, let's call them, they look where the aircraft are currently, and if the criteria for that algorithm are met, then the alert activates. So within Conflict Alert, there's multiple algorithms operating simultaneously. They could all be met. One of them could be met, and then the alert activates.
And the presentation to the controller, is it different depending upon which algorithm is activated?
No, it's not.
Okay, so just so that my understanding, based on what Mr. Allen said, it's an oral alert and a red flashing alert on the display?
Correct, yep. There is one other indicator. There's what's called the CA, Conflict Alert List, which provides the call signs of the two aircraft that are involved. It's like a window on the display in addition to the data blocks, which are turning red, flashing, and so on.
Okay, thank you. Has there been any research conducted on controller response time to conflict alerts?
Yes, there has. In a variety of circumstances, the response times can vary depending upon what the response is. If the alert is urgent, the controllers will respond right away. Other times, if the alert is maybe on the margins, they may wait a bit to look to see what happens. They also may know that something is about to happen. For example, an aircraft may be alerting, but the controller knows when it reaches this fix, it's going to turn. So they may wait to respond until that turn happens or doesn't. And then if it doesn't, then they respond. Or if it does happen as they expected, then they may not make the call.
Is there any way to track, do we know what the false alarm rate or the nuisance sort of alert rate is of these systems?
Can make a distinction. We use two different terms. False alerts are those that occur when, for example, a surveillance error occurs, so that the system is perceiving the aircraft in a position that it isn't actually in reality. In that case, we call that a false alert. There is no situation that is unsafe. It's a technical fault. The other kind, which we refer to as nuisance alerts, those are alerts where the situation meets the criteria of an alert. It is not false in that sense, but it is typically the controller has already addressed the situation or has used other means like visual separation or divergent course separation to address the alert in some other way, and the alert system is not doesn't know that action has been taken. And so that alert in some sense it's not false, but we consider it falling into the nuisance category. It's not a great term for it, but that is what we call it. The false alarm rate is very, very low, especially at a big airport that has good surveillance, good radar. There's almost no radar error. The alerts in a false sense will be very, very uncommon. A nuisance alert depends on the position of the aircraft, how busy that sector may be, the procedures, how close the aircraft are normally coming. And so the nuisance alert rate will vary very much by the sector specific or the facility. The tracking it requires very deep analysis of whether that alert, what was going on at that time of that alert. Very resource intensive kinds of analysis. So the tracking that you could do is more the numbers of alerts that occur rather than whether those alerts were nuisances or not.
If I recall from the interviews with the controllers, they do get alerts on a daily basis. And assuming they do have these nuisance alerts, what does that do to controllers' response time to these alerts? How do nuisance alerts impact their response?
Anytime there is any sort of alert, what's called desensitization is a concern. The trick is to make you never want the alert system to miss a real one. So we tend to err on the side of alerting even when maybe we don't need to. We would much rather take a nuisance alert or a false alert than a miss. So the system is designed to provide some number of alerts that might qualify as a nuisance. That does have an effect potentially on controllers' trust in the system, their response times. The effect would be in the nature of waiting to see if the situation can be resolved organically or without action. If the situation is urgent, the controller response times are very quick. They'll issue traffic, they'll issue a maneuver, they will coordinate with their other sectors. Over time, if there were a lot of nuisance alerts, that would be a big concern on response times and also the accuracy of the response, what response they take. That is a concern that is not just in air traffic or in aviation, but in all sorts of life-critical alert situations in medicine, in the military. It's something that human factors people like myself, we spend a lot of our energy to make sure that that is not the alert rate, the nuisance alert rate is kept as low as possible.
Great, thank you. Is this a new system, this conflict alerting? Is this a fairly old system?
The system that was used at DCA and at Potomac Tracon uses what's called the STARS, the Standard Terminal Automation Replacement System. STARS was designed in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was deployed in that time period across the NAS. So it is not new. It is 20 years old or so. The alert algorithms are based on the previous system, which is called ARTS, Automated Radar Terminal System. That existed from the 70s. The alert algorithms have been developed over time and evolved. So no, they're not new.
Is there new technology available that could sort of prevent these nuisance alerts that controllers are getting?
There are techniques that exist. They're not necessarily using new technology, but there would be additional enhancements to algorithms or additional parameters that systems in other domains have utilized. En route air traffic control has a system called Conflict Probe, which is more sophisticated. It is more of a strategic conflict alert, but it has more sophisticated algorithms where it can look into the future and consider more factors when it decides whether to alert or not. Those would be software changes to STARS. There are a variety of parameters inside of STARS that can be adjusted either at the local level or the national level, and there are ways for air traffic to adjust those parameters to help optimize the system.
And is that facility specific?
There are national parameters that are set. The facilities do have an ability to adjust parameters on a local level to an extent. There is a process for reviewing requests to adjust the parameters. If the adjustments are approved, then they can be implemented at the local level.
Okay, I'm going to ask to suspend. Just stop for a second. We'll come back to the technical panel, but I can tell that people need a break. So we are going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll come back and resume with the technical panel. Yeah, we are bringing fans, and then everyone's going to move the NTSB to another location.
hot? On this side or that side? That's camera one. Okay. Great. Who's hot? Questions are coming from over here with three. Who's hot? Two? Three. Okay. What does she got on seven? Hey. while we were there.
right, if we can, I gave a little bit more time to make sure that we could set up some fans. I will remind everyone, you're welcome to ditch your jackets. Looking at you, Army. Nope, the boss is watching. You can't do it. I'm sorry about the heat. We're trying. So we will get started again with the technical panel, and you all take as much time as you need.
Who's going back? Brian? We're going to start again with Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. Just a few more questions for you, Dr. Allendorfer. We were talking about the conflict alerting system and the different algorithms and the age of the system, how long this system has been around. So are there any changes that can be made to the current system that could improve the salience of the alerts, so maybe prioritizing one of the algorithms over another?
There are some improvements that we have identified in various reports. Those improvements would be software changes to STARS. The program office in air traffic would have to figure out an implementation strategy, work with the vendor, and do that. But there are improvements that could be made. Yes.
Is that a fairly easy fix, or?
Not easy. Probably no.
Okay.
Expensive. Probably yes.
Cheaper than replacing the whole system?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Has the FAA explored other technologies that could replace the current system, the conflict alerting system? Is that even possible?
Not that I'm aware of.
From your perspective and the research that you've done, can you say what the reliability or the accuracy is of conflict alerts? Is that even something that we can measure?
The accuracy, in the sense that is it false or not, is very, very high. It is almost never false. The reliability, in the sense that does this alert indicate a situation that is needs the controller's attention? In sort of by definition, the conflict alert is designed to identify situations that require attention. Whether they also require an action or a maneuver or some sort of other action like that, that's not. It's a very hard to determine how reliable it would be in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allen, from a controller's perspective, do you have a sense of how often is a controller having to respond to a conflict alert?
Naturally, you respond every time.
Well, but I mean from the sense, is it a nuisance alert where, as you said, well, you know that it's not really a conflict versus this is a conflict that I have to actually take action with one or both of the aircraft?
I would say approximately 40 to 50% of the time, the alert is not relevant.
Okay, thank you. Switching gears a little bit, still for Dr. Allendorfer, we heard in panel 2 that transmissions may be blocked or stepped on, particularly when the helicopter and fixed wing traffic are on separate frequencies. And I believe it was stated that there was no way for the controller to know if a transmission was stepped on, correct, Mr. Allen? I think you said that yesterday. There's nothing that tells you that one of the transmissions made was stepped on.
No, there's nothing that indicates that.
So, Dr. Allendorfer, is there any technology available that would alert a controller, that could be used to alert a controller that a transmission's been stepped on? Are you aware of anything?
There were voice technology systems, one called Nexcom from many years ago, 20 years ago or so, that were under development that would address, to an extent, step-ons. Basically, the controller would have basically a block. Their transmissions would essentially make the channel busy, and other transmissions would be blocked. That is not the system that we currently have, but that technology does exist in the world, but not in the NAS.
Are you able to speak, Dr. Allendorfer, to normalization of deviance? Or are you able to explain that sort of concept and what that means?
From a human factors perspective?
Yes.
Yes. So normalization of deviance, is that what you're asking? So,
correct.
So deviance would be doing something that is different than the norm, outside the rules, doing something that's not allowed. If that is done repeatedly and becomes sort of culturally what is commonly done, people don't get in trouble for doing so, then the deviance becomes the norm of the people who are in that situation. They learn to start not paying attention to it, to do it as a commonplace thing. It's the kind of everybody does it, what's the big deal kind of situation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allen, you mentioned in your previous interviews, you talked about the controllers having to do these squeeze plays and making it work at DCA. Do you think that controllers are becoming comfortable with having to, make it work? Is that something that you would say controllers have to do with the amount of traffic, having to offload traffic, having to manage the helicopter control, local control positions being combined? Are they constantly having to make it work in the tower?
A majority of the time, yes.
Yeah. This question I have for, anyone on the tech panel who would like to answer, or I'm sorry, on the witness panel who would like to answer. But, I mean, is the DCA airspace safe to fly in?
I'd like to answer that question.
That'd be great, thanks.
Absolutely, it's safe to fly in.
Mm-hmm.
I flew out myself this weekend, round trip. I plan to do so in another few weeks. The U.S. is one of 193 countries in the world, but we operate and maintain and safely provide air traffic services to about 28 to 36% on any given day of the world aviation traffic. The controllers at DCA are responsible, well-trained, and I would have no problem leaving out on a flight in or out of that airport at any given day.
Thank you. Mr. Dressler?
The airspace system since 1986, the helicopter routes, were very successful. Obviously, that success ended quite tragically on January 29. To answer your question, today, the airspace is the least safe it's ever been, thanks to the changes that have been implemented after January 29.
Mr. Van Vechten, do you have any thoughts on the airspace?
Yes, I've always felt that the airspace was safe. I don't think safety has decreased since the accident.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have for now.
Okay, I have a couple clarifying questions and some tag-ons from earlier. First of all, we asked a question regarding the assistant local controller's expectations. Mr. Fuller, I know you've had an opportunity. You reviewed this event correctly in some way, shape, or form, had looked at the SRT and all of that?
Correct.
Okay. From your standpoint in ATO, did the assistant local controller meet the expectations of the air traffic organization that day?
From the perspective, again, without knowing what conversations took place in the tower, the only thing I've known is the interview notes. And from the interview notes, I think the assistant local controller didn't detect the conflict. Our expectation, if they had, is to alert the local. But again, not having been in the tower, I don't know if they were busy with other duties. So if they were providing other assistance, then yes, they met my expectations. But if they were merely just not working, then again, it's really unfair for me to Monday morning quarterback and knowing the result.
That's okay. And how about the tower team concept? You mentioned that earlier. Do you think the tower team concept, as outlined in 7110 or 7210, do you think that met the expectations on that evening as a whole?
Ideally, the helicopter position would have been split from the local control. And my expectation is that would have been the decision that was made from the ops supervisor, given the workload, given the time of day, and given that there was helicopter traffic.
Okay. Very good. And Mr. Jarvis, same questions. As a quality control expert for the Eastern Service Area and previously the representative for DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower, from your viewpoint in the review of this event, did you find the assistant local controller met expectations?
I did agree with Mr. Fuller in not knowing what other duties were their efforts being made. So I wouldn't be able to qualify that answer.
And how about the tower team concept?
It failed.
Okay. And do you have any feelings one way or the other? You spent some time in that facility, I know, so you're familiar with their requirements they had, at least at the time, for the helicopter position, staffing, and all of that. Do you feel, based on the traffic that you observed in this event and everything you know about the event, that the positions B&D combined was consistent with the SOP and would have met your expectations?
I did review the event and went back quite a bit, and there just wasn't enough helicopter traffic in the vicinity. Now I'll say, as the event developed, the number were there, the number of helicopters was there, but there was little complexity, from what I recall, to that helicopter traffic.
Okay. And there's a clarification from yesterday that we have our colleagues at NACA and our group member that joined us in our investigation brought to our attention yesterday, which is just relevant and I think good to bring out here, which was we were talking about the helicopter route charts and the altitude requirements and that they were suggestive and what the concept was. It just so happens that the DCA LOA with the 12th Aviation Battalion actually outlines that they will follow the helicopter route chart when they request the transition through there to include the altitudes. As a matter of fact, reading right from the LOA, which of course I can't do. Yeah, I can't do it. Okay, so anyway, it does say that they will comply. So for DCA, there is an expectation that they would be at or below 200 feet as published on the helicopter route chart by agreement with the local, the LOA.
Mr. Soper, may
yes.
I make one clarifying statement about, it's Rick Dressler, by the way. May I make a statement about that as well?
Yes.
There's a specific note on the chart that I looked at after yesterday's session, and it specifically states that acceptance into the Class B is as depicted and it does constitute a clearance that you cannot deviate from. There should be no confusion on this point.
Great. Even further clarification. So that's awesome.
If I may add some context, again, when you talk about the specific helicopter routes, and the discussion was not meant to say that helicopter operators don't need to follow the routes and can just go willy-nilly around the Class Bravo. But again, there are no defined widths on the helicopter routes. The altitudes, even on the different helicopter charts as published, if you look at the, say, the Dallas-Fort Worth helicopter charts, the language on the altitude says should be 1,300. It's a gap we've identified. We are working to close that with our National Helicopter Work Group. We therefore, if an aircraft drifts off the bank of the river and drifts toward the center of the river, how could we therefore violate that pilot for doing something to remain clear of clouds or avoiding traffic? It's not to say that these helicopter routes shouldn't be followed, but it's just to say that as an air traffic controller, if you are depending on that route width definition for separation or the altitude for separation, you need to take positive control and provide clear, consistent instructions, consistent with the phraseology in the Class Bravo airspace that says, via route, maintain altitude while in Bravo airspace.
Okay.
Mr. Fuller, just for those, can you describe what positive control means?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Positive control is ensuring that you know specifically exactly what route, altitude, or heading that an aircraft will maintain. And what I mean by that, Mr. Soper, I'm certain you can relate to this, is if you have an aircraft check on at 8,500 request and flight follow, and you ready to identify that aircraft clearment of the Bravo, you expect them to maintain at 8,500. But if for some reason that aircraft starts descending to avoid clouds or buildup or something, they have that prerogative unless you specifically assign them that altitude of 8,500. And if that's what you're dependent on for safety, for separation from an IFR aircraft, you need to assign it. And that's the relevant example I can provide for the helicopter routes.
Understand. So, Mr. Fuller, this question is actually for you. We continually heard through the interviews there's been a longstanding contentious subject of miles and trail being provided from Potomac to DCA. Can you explain to us what miles and trail are, what we're referring to when we say that term?
Miles and trail is typically a term referred to as the separation standard from subsequent aircraft, and normally it's in an arrival stream or a final approach stream. Okay.
And having experience working at multiple facilities and in roles and oversight and whatnot, and including high-capacity demand airports, would you find it normal for miles and trail criteria to be agreed upon through LOAs between the towers and the overarching TRACONs?
Typically, miles and trail are dynamic and on demand. They're based on weather conditions, traffic volume. Obviously, you have a normal standard, but a mile and trail, depending on the winds or the weather conditions, if aircraft are deviating, is going to change every day.
Okay. Are you aware of any facilities that do have miles and trail actually agreed upon in their LOA?
There are some.
To assist with flow. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Allen, we noticed in the LOA with Potomac TRACON there is no prescribed miles and trail there. Do you know why that is?
To my knowledge, the facilities could never come to an agreement on it.
Okay. Have you been part of any discussions with that facility to attempt to get a miles and trail agreement at all that you're aware of or that you can recall?
I know it was a part of one that occurred many years ago, but I can't recall the substance of it.
Okay. And Mr. Lehman, so being the overarching TRACON for DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower, do you remember any conversations of that over the years regarding miles and trail or attempts to get an established miles and trail agreement between the two?
Yes, but they were on a dynamic basis, not on a every day, every hour basis. So we have actually put them in on a dynamic basis as they were that night.
Okay. I've noticed some facilities they approach it one of two ways. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the dynamics because it's ever changing. And I've seen some facilities, they say that we want the miles and trail because that's what we need to execute departures. And if you want to tighten it up, you can request that. And if workload permits, we can go ahead and let you bring them in tighter. This facility seems to do the opposite, which is Potomac basically sets the miles and trail, and if DCA needs more space, they call in a restriction through the traffic management, put it into the NTML to ask for 4 miles. Is that an accurate categorization of that?
Yeah, so we're sharing, 96% of the time we're sharing one runway. So we have it set up as protocol is if they need 4 miles because we have a significant amount of departures, they will ask for it. More in an arrival time. If we have no arrivals, we don't need that. But DCA many times of the day has a mixture of arrivals and departures.
Mr. Allen, I noted in a number of people we spoke to that it is pretty common to have to put in restrictions during different periods of the day, especially during the periods of high demand. Does Potomac, do they historically, have they been traditionally or more often, are they more often meeting the miles and trail that is requested, or are they missing the miles and trail when you have a restriction in?
Historically, I would say it varies. There will be times of a stretch of period of time where there is greater compliance, and then there will be stretches of time where there is not.
And are you able to get that? Are supervisors able to get that corrected on site? What's their avenue if they put in a restriction and then they're still not getting the miles and trail?
The avenue is the TMU and the tower would talk to the Potomac TMU, and the operations supervisor could call out to Mount Vernon is the sector overlying at Potomac that overlies DCA and provides radar services for us. The supervisors could talk and have a discussion about what the impediments are and the best path forward.
Okay. Do you recall during post-event reviews whether or not there was a restriction in leading up to the time of this accident?
There was.
And were they meeting that 4 miles and trail? Or were they not meeting the 4 miles and trail, or are you unaware?
From my recollection, I believe they complied a majority of the time.
Okay. On that evening, the local controller was soliciting arriving air crews to accept a runway 33 arrival in order to get departures out. And can you explain to us, first of all, what we mean when we say offloading to 3-3? What does that mean?
Offloading to 3-3 is if there's a heavy arrival demand and spacing is tighter, you would take the aircraft to 3-3. I think that evening the winds were heavy out of the northwest, 320, gusting to some number. So aircraft arriving directly into the wind, they don't have that crosswind component, and that may have been another factor is he was providing service for performance for them, but I have not interviewed him and can't speak as to why he was doing those things.
All right. During discussions afterward with anybody about the event, I know you said you didn't interview him or anything, was there any indication that miles and trail that evening played any role in the local controller's decision to attempt offloading aircraft to 3-3 for those departures, or was it strictly coincidental?
No, prior to the accident, there was demand on the airport, and you could easily infer that he was using it to offload aircraft.
Okay. Ms. Chendi, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick, or Mr. Fuller.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to add in, there are additional avenues and the pilot does not have to accept the circle of 3-3. And so they can solicit it. They can slow the aircraft when they check out on the final. I don't want the misconception to be that the solution is always to offset to 3-3. They can do S-turns on final. There are various avenues to control that flow, and in addition to demanding that the TRACON provide a certain mile and trail if they need it. And so I just don't want that to get lost in the conversation.
Understand. Ms. Chendi, one day after the accident, there was a systemic issue review conducted to look at the miles and trail issue, actually. There was I believe the title on the the systems review was that Potomac not meeting the 4 miles and trail, whatever, during exceptions. So do you recall, were you a part of that systemic issue review?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And can you recall for us the findings that came out of that review?
Certainly. Overall, well, the review was done starting sometime in September of 2024 through January, well, through the incident itself. And basically, we were doing a review of the mile and trail that the TRACON was providing the tower, and when they made the request for 4 miles. And in that review, we realized that 90% of the time, the TRACON provided 4 miles in trail to the transfer control point, or to the final approach fix. However, the tower is requesting for 4 miles in trail to the runway threshold. Now, when we went to review the percentage for the TRACON providing the in-trail to the tower, that was more around 60% of the time.
Okay. And do you remember what the recommendations of that review was? I think it was classified under a certain classification. Do you remember what that was? Concur and elevate. That's what it was. What does that mean?
Well, the review was done at tower level. So certainly they need the next facility or another facility to actually solve the issue that they discovered during the review.
So on that one, do you remember what was recommended in that review?
I do. It was, the consensus was TRACON should provide 5 miles in trail to the transfer control point. And I'm just going to paraphrase.
Yes.
Okay. And the request is 5 miles in trail to the transfer control point, which will then provide 4 miles in trail to the runway threshold. And as such, there needs to be a review of the airport arrival rate.
Okay, and I believe that we got a response from the FAA that said this review is still in progress. Mr. Fuller, can you speak to that? Like, where is it at in the process?
So, concur and elevate, typically those events go to the service center for resolution. This particular one went to the service center quality control group, which they don't normally manage traffic management disputes. So where it was turned over to is for the district, the TMO, the DDSO, and the Director of Air Traffic Operations to determine what's most appropriate. I believe it's still currently open because it hasn't been resolved.
Okay.
The challenge is one facility made a recommendation that affects multiple facilities. And it's to be quite honest, to alleviate the amount of work that they may or may not have to do. And so it's going to be a complicated issue to resolve. Yes, 4 miles at the transfer control point, that's typically where most approach controllers provide separation. They don't provide separation all the way to the runway threshold because it's well outside their area of control. Some air transfer control points are anywhere from between 5 to 7 miles from the runway threshold. It's almost impossible for the TRACON to run a 4 or 5 mile final all the way to the threshold when that would be well within the tower controller's airspace. And so it's not an easy to solve answer.
Well, and that's actually my next question for Mr. Lehman. What are the challenges presented by Potomac Tracon in providing 4 miles in trail or 5 miles in trail for that matter, if you were privy to that?
There are multiple challenges. Sometimes we actually did. Oh, sorry. There are multiple challenges. Sometimes we actually did make the mistake of not giving them the right separation. Sometimes Washington Center, who feeds us, is not giving us the miles in trail that we're supposed to get. We actually have 5 feeds that come into to Potomac to feed DCA. Normally, in a busy arrival bank, we only get 20 miles in trail over each feed. So we have to do other air traffic maneuvers inside of Potomac's airspace in order to get that 4 miles. Lastly, at times, the tower is required by our LOA to let us know when they slow aircraft or S-turn aircraft inside of their airspace, and normally they do not let us know. So every time they slow one, it's an accordion effect. It affects the next one and probably the next 3 after. So there's multiple issues of why it's not accomplished, and like Nick said, it is much harder to get to the threshold than it is to the transfer of control point, which is 5 miles.
Okay. And Ms. Chindy, back to the review again, are you the one that forwarded the review beyond, or did that go from the facility and you were just part of the review panel team, or what group?
No, it was the facility doing that. I was simply part of the review.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Allen, do you know where that was forwarded to when you forwarded it? Did you get any feedback from the service area that they were forwarding it elsewhere?
Once we had electronically submitted it, Concur and Elevate, it goes to the Eastern Service Area, and that was the last that I personally had heard about it.
All right. Mr. Allen, going back to the practice of offloading traffic to runway 33, this is a non-standard operation that in discussions with pilots while we were on site and even controllers increases workload on the part of both sides, the flight crew as well as air traffic control to some extent. And what is the number one reason that you find that controllers elect to offload arrivals to 33 as the mitigation?
To supplement for the spacing on final.
So why would they choose
Sorry, we didn't hear that.
Oh, to supplement for the space on final.
Right. So you're building space. But what about? One second. So what I'm asking is, why is it that they choose that mitigation over others? That seems to be their favored mitigation.
Because with that mitigation, you can continue to the arrivals and departures. If you utilized another mitigation, something's going to back up.
Give me an example of two. Compare the two.
If you just slowed aircraft on final, then the volume of arrivals is just going to build up onto Potomac, and the volume of arrivals is now extended out beyond what it was ever going to be.
So how does offloading to 33 build space? Can you just kind of tell us how that works?
Yeah, so at approximately the Wilson Bridge, aircraft begin circling out wider to then turn final for runway 33. So as they're conducting that maneuver, it builds more space in between the previous arrival. And while they're doing that, you're able to have another aircraft on position on runway 1. And whenever the 33 arrival lands and rolls through the runway intersection, you don't have to wait for that plane to exit the runway like you would if they landed on runway 1. So you can immediately say clear for takeoff and continue working.
Okay. When we were on site conducting interviews, we heard the term repeatedly, we just make it work. And we heard this from air traffic controllers, we heard it from air traffic control staff, and we heard it even from pilots operating in and around the airport. That term turned up in many of our interviews. And what does that term mean to you? When you're saying that, what are you saying?
As far as a controller perspective and my own personal perspective, is making it work is utilizing all available tools to you to compensate for the compacted volume. Whether it's utilizing off runways, I previously, when I was current on position, I would, if I had aircraft in the block holding short of a runway, and I knew I needed to get the departure out, I would tell them there, prepare for an immediate departure after the next arrival.
And how often do you think you're in this mode of operation where we just have to make it work? Is it a daily thing that exists at that facility throughout days, or is it something that just happens occasionally? Or
pre-accident, it was routine.
Routine. And how do you believe that affects the facility's safety culture as a whole, or impacts the safety culture? If you're operating routinely in a we just got to make it work environment.
It can be taxing on a person, constantly have to give, or push in order to efficiently move traffic.
Okay. We noted that each controller we spoke to, when asked if they felt pressure to offload to runway 33 when they had traffic building up like that or needed to make a hole for departures, none of them believed that they felt pressure to utilize that. However, all of them were doing it routinely in order to make it work. So in that mode of operation, something that was kind of communicated to us, and you can tell me your feel on this, but that essentially the controller, the pilot, everybody had to be 100% all the time because of the make it work. Everything came with an exception or an addendum. Every clearance was keep your engine spooled up, be ready to go, your number one traffic 2-mile final. And then they're telling the traffic 2-mile final, traffic will be departing ahead of you, blah, blah, blah. When they land, it's no delay on the runway, traffic is this. That is a routine thing. We listen to a lot of communication from the facility. So is that a correct categorization that it's kind of a mode where everybody has to be 100% all the time for that to continue to work correctly?
So the controllers at DCA are going to provide a safe and efficient service. They are a very hardworking group, and they are going to use all available tools to expedite the flow of traffic in a safe manner.
Okay. Do you believe that the we just make it work mentality has been normalized at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
There's various factors. With the compacted demand that occurs, whether when weather gets involved, when spacing isn't being given, when there's miles in trail requested on departures, that creates a volume backup on ground. Like I testified yesterday, there's a limited real estate for the airport and where to put aircraft, and that can back up very easily. So being a high volume, high complex airport with not a lot of real estate, you have to keep things moving in order to provide a safe and efficient service.
Mr. Fuller.
I think the characterization of we just make it work is not to say that it's pressure based on the airport. Controllers are public servants, and most of the controllers that I know take pride in making sure everyone gets out to their destination or at their on their flight on time safely. And so whether it's we've got a lot of demand or a piece of equipment out or 5 people called in sick for the shift or there's a thunderstorm to the west of the field, We just make it work means we're going to get you where you're going as safely as possible. It's not to say that we are going to work in a constrained environment. Our job is to get people where they're going. And so when we say we'll just make it work, it's just give me the airplane, I'll make it work.
So, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on that. What does everyone else think? We just make it work. The people who actually work in the tower. What does that mean?
At Potomac, we have similar issues that DCA Tower has. We have many non-standard tools that we use in order to be able to bring a significant amount of airplanes into DCA. One of them is nicknamed a trombone. They come off of one of our feeds. We take them down like this, then take them back up the same way that they came. We trombone them in order to build in space. Not too many facilities do such a thing. There is a second one called cross-feeding that we do every day. Tromboning is not as much, but it's probably done once a day or twice a day. So these are non-standard air traffic maneuvers that we do on a daily basis to make it work. And I agree with Nick, we take pride in it, but I will say that at a certain point it's too much.
Yes. I think an issue is we have efficiency, being challenged with safety. And it's a fine line, and that demand is pretty high. The controllers do a remarkable job there. But it's at a pretty high threshold right now.
All right. So as pertaining to the making it work spirit, there are tons of constraints in the NAS. And depending on what's going on, we do our best, of course, to not only safely move traffic, but do it efficiently. So at the tower, in a way, they've built the culture with making it work, right? If you go to another tower, they may call it something else. But even at facilities, at the center, they will talk about the constraints they have working next to another facility in New York Center, of the fact that they have to do things where they have to sometimes compensate for work that they believe should be done by New York Center. So I believe each facility is sort of different in what they do to move traffic and just get flights or get passengers to their destinations.
So I think I need to differentiate here, because I think that we might be mixing up apples and oranges when we talk about we just make it work from the go get 'em initiative and spirit mode. I agree. Air traffic controllers are very much that type of person, regardless, across the NAS. That's always been my experience. This is a little different. This is we just make it work because we don't have another choice. There is airplanes coming, and everything was related to the capacity, the demand, or the amount of traffic that was coming in and having to meet that demand. And there was, this is actually a good lead-in, actually, to Mr. Lehman. Can you explain to me what our airport arrival rate is?
It is the arrival rate to a runway, specifically. In this case, it would be 1 and 19 at DCA. And it is how many arrivals we can land in an hour. And
Okay.
there is a formula in our 7210.3 It's 10-7-4 and 10-7-5, and it speaks directly of how you're supposed to address issues and what the math formula is for coming up with an arrival rate.
Okay, so Mr. Fuller, we've attempted to get this information a number of times, and maybe there's a disconnect in how we're communicating the request. However, we did receive a partially responsive response, which was we were provided the actual arrival rates that were in place at the time of the event, what their established arrival rates were. And just to bounce back to Mr. Lehman, do you recall how long those arrival rates had been in place leading up to the time of the accident?
What I know for a fact is I've been the ATM since February of 2022. They have been in that long. They were in when I took over. I do not know the last time they were reviewed.
Okay. So my question, Mr. Fuller, is do we know yet when the last time those rates were established prior to the event?
So I think just to clarify, those rates were established in 2014 is the best of knowledge I can find.
Okay.
I was not in this position at that time, so I don't have any of those relevant documents.
Okay.
I may actually be your best bet to answer the question as far as your arrival rates are concerned for DCA.
Great. Absolutely.
Okay. And doing so because I've been CMO since 2017. Okay. So the last review we did for DCA as far as the rates were, well, when I say last review, we do the review every year. Okay. However, the last change we made to the rates for DCA were in 2019, where the rates in the North configuration were actually raised. When you go on the OIS page, you see, well, that was the last time we made the change.
Okay, are you the person that conducts the annual review? Is it a group of people?